Hey, Beastista here, and welcome back to the VDL. This is going to be season 6 of the VDL's draft analysis for my team. So, before we start, one thing that's noteworthy is that the VDL has split into two different draft leagues, the VDL V Create and the VDL Searing Shot. The reason why this is important is that the VDL V Create is considered the more competitive of the two, and thus the VDL V has become significantly more competitive from it last season. And so this definitely makes it very difficult to kind of make draft teams and feel like you're going to do well throughout the season. And so I definitely felt like I was pressured into making a very good decision on picking the optimal typing because I decided to go with a monotype team again, as I did the last two seasons. So let's look at the types that I considered. So here are 11 types, and I considered all 11 of these types very strongly, and only a couple days before the draft that I even started removing any of these from the list. So I ordered these by how close they were, which is the bottom tier was the early ones I got rid of. The middle ones were the ones I almost picked, and then the top two were the ones I ended up picking, and Dark and Fighting. So looking at these, I kind of can separate them to two categories. The bottom one, the reason why I didn't pick them was I feel like even if I had an optimal team, and by optimal team I mean if nobody picked any of the Pokemon I wanted, and I got every single Pokemon I wanted based on the construction of the tier system, I feel the team would probably be slightly underpowered. The second list I considered very closely. I almost picked some of them, but I feel like they were difficult in the fact that assuming that other people were going to pick intelligent Pokemon, which with this being as competitive as the league it is and having 24 coaches, it seems very likely. It seemed like it might be difficult to build any of these teams. And thus I decided Dark and Fighting. The reason why there's two is because I thought it was completely impossible for me to go in with exclusively one type in mind. I felt like I needed to have both types in mind. So Dark and Fighting are not kind of the first type you would necessarily expect in a monotype, but some of the reasons why I decided them, the first being that they cover their weaknesses very well. What I mean by that is, first, if we look at fighting, we can see that we have two fighting steel Pokemon, which are very good at covering fairy Pokemon offensively, and defensively, they take neutral damage to psychic, flying, and fairy, which are the three fighting weaknesses. Next, we can see that we have a fighting rock Pokemon, which can offensively do very good damage into flying Pokemon. And we have two dark fighting Pokemon, which do very good offensively into psychic Pokemon. And then finally, we have Gallade, which is good defensively against psychic Pokemon. So we can also look at the dark Pokemon. We see we have some flying dark Pokemon, which are good against fighting and bug Pokemon. We see that we have Ghost dark Pokemon, which defensively are immune to fighting moves, which are very useful. And then we have Poison Dark, which are neutral to fighting, fairy, and bug, which are the three weaknesses of Dark. In addition, they're super effective damage into fairy, which is one of the weaknesses. We have a Psychic Dark Pokemon, which is able to do super effective damage and take neutral damage to fighting Pokemon, and then Steel Dark, which is super effective damage into fairies and takes neutral damage to fairies. And so we can see with both of the types, they're very good at kind of covering their weaknesses specifically. In addition to that, we can kind of see these are what I would consider the Pokemon that I considered most important for the draft team to be successful. So looking at the dark side, we see Moltres, which is I considered very important. There's not many special attacking dark Pokemon, and Moltres is one of the better. And in addition to that, it also is a great answer to fighting Pokemon, which are in theory concerning. Bisharp, which is one of the best answers to fairy Pokemon, in addition being a pretty good Pokemon independently, and then Sableye being a prankster Pokemon that is immune to fighting coverage, which is great. And then on the right, we see the fighting Pokemon, which I consider Lucario, Terrakion, and Cobalion all as necessary Pokemon, where the steel fighting is incredible typing because it takes neutral damage to all fighting weaknesses, and also super effective damage into fairy Pokemon. In addition, Lucario is one of the only special attacking fighting Pokemon as well. And then Terrakion having the rock coverage to deal with the fire fighting Pokemon or flying Pokemon, which is one of the concerns for a fighting team as well. And then in the middle, we can see we have Urshifu, which Urshifu is very good for the fighting team because it's able to do super effective damage into psychic Pokemon and is immune to psychic Pokemon. And in addition, it's very good for the dark team because it's just a great Pokemon in general. It has the ability to uh, do damage through protect and has pretty good stats overall. And so those are kind of the important Pokemon I considered. And if any of these Pokemon were picked before my first pick, I probably was planning on going to the other one. And so overall, the obvious pick is to start with Urshifu. As you can see, we have all dark Pokemon on the board. And the reason why this is the case is because before my second pick, Terrakion was selected. And I decided that without Terrakion, I don't think I have a great way to deal with flying Pokemon. And so I decided that I was going to go dark. And so here we go is after my first round, this is what kind of the board looks like. These are all the dark Pokemon starting with tier 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I have Urshifu in green, and the X's are the Pokemon that were drafted. As you can see, there's some very good Pokemon drafted, but in honestly speaking, I wasn't actually planning on drafting any of these Pokemon, even though they're very good. And I decided to go with Sableye. So Sableye, I think, is by far the best Prankster Pokemon and is one of the more powerful Pokemon in a Mono Dark team. Or, in general, it's a just incredibly powerful Pokemon. But I think I may have valued it too highly because what ends up being the case is there are quite a few Prankster Dark Pokemon that have Fake Out, just like a Sableye. So obviously we see one of them was taken in Lightbard, but Morgrem in tier 4, Impident, and Purloin in tier 5 both also have Fake Out and Prankster and can be very powerful Pokemon. So maybe I overvalued it, but it's very unclear. And then after that, I ended up getting Bisharp. So I was near the top of I was second overall pick, and so I had two of my picks back to back so all my kind of picks are going to be in pairs, and then we see a huge change in the number of people. And so I decided to go with Bisharp because I think Bisharp, I thought, was a very important piece. There are not many tier 3 Pokemon I actually really want because I'm not a huge fan of Sneasel on my team, not a huge fan of Liepard on my team, I'm not a huge fan of Guzzler on my team. So the top two are the only ones I really cared that much about. And so I decided to go with that because, there were so many that I didn't care that much about. And so what ends up happening, though, is in the next round, before I get to my next pick, Moltres was taken, which is very sad. It's definitely a Pokemon I considered really highly. And so in theory, if instead of getting Sableye, I got Moltres, this next pick, which I'm about to show y'all, instead of getting Sableye, if it wasn't available, I could have gotten something like Purloin or Impident and kind of had a Fake Out Pokemon with Prankster that was a replacement for Sableye. However, Sableye is by far better. So, maybe in the end it's not that bad. So I ended up going with Zoroark. So Zoroark I picked for a couple reasons, but the big one is it's one of the few special attacking dark Pokemon left. As in, it's the only special attacking dark Pokemon other than Hydreigon that has over, 100 special attack. And so it definitely seems like it's, good way to kind of cover the lack of special attack damage that I'm going to have without Moltres. And I also decided to go with Mandibuzz as a second tier 2 that also has the flying dark type, which defensively is very good, but Mandibuzz's lack of offense is a little bit concerning because it is not going to do great damage into fighting Pokemon, even though it can take fighting moves reasonably well. So next we can kind of see we lost quite a few Pokemon in the next round. We lost Skuntank, we lost Purloin, we lost Scrafty, Umbreon. So none of these were hugely sad except for specifically Skuntank. Skuntank was a Pokemon I really wanted to get because I thought it was one of the best tier 5s for me specifically because the poison dark type is very good for me. And last season, Skuntank was by far my best Pokemon. But I decided to kind of get Drapion instead because I do feel like I needed a dark poison Pokemon, and Drapion, though different than Skuntank, it does fill the role pretty well, and it's a good way to kind of deal large damage into fairy Pokemon and not having any weaknesses that are a common weakness of dark Pokemon. However, what we see is between my pick and the previous one, Spiritomb was taken. Spiritomb is a Pokemon I really wanted as a tier 5 because it does have the fighting immunity. It does have the neutral damage to bug. However, I don't think I was actually going to pick it next. I was hoping to get it in my neck, the wheel around, because I ended up getting Malamar. So the reason why I decided on Malamar is twofold. At this point, is because I felt like it was very important because Psychic Dark is a good way to kind of deal with fighting Pokemon, which currently I don't have a great offensive way to deal with it. Deal with fighting Pokemon because my lack of Moltres. In addition, it's the only Dark Pokemon that gets Trick Room, which is definitely an important ability to at least have access to, based on my opponent's or other possible teams. And so that was what I ended up getting with that. And as we can see, as the draft kind of goes on, Hydreigon was picked up and Sharpedo was picked up, and now we can see that I'm kind of in a situation where I still haven't picked my tier 1 or tier 2, and I currently only have two options, Tyranitar and Weavile, so it seems like I should probably pick one of those. However, looking at the construction of the draft at this exact moment, we see that no one actually had a ability to draft a tier 1 or tier 2 Pokemon that didn't have a dark Pokemon already. So everyone who could draft a tier 1 or tier 2 at this point had a dark Pokemon already. And so I came to the conclusion that I could wait until my last pick to get Weavile or Tyranitar, and I can get my tier 5s now. And so I decided to go with Shiftry. So Shiftry picked it for a couple reasons. One, it has Fake Out, which is always useful. Two, I don't really have a great way to deal with a bulky water Pokemon at the moment, and so even though it's not the best answer, it is a pretty good way to deal some more large amount of damage to it. And thirdly, it does have Chlorophyll, and Sableye does have Sunny Day, and so that is somewhat of a combo. And then the other one I picked was Lanoon. Lanoon, the reason why I picked it is because it honestly has pretty reasonable stats. If you give it an EV Light, it's very bulky. In addition to that, it has Parting Shot, Snarl. It has Taunt. Overall, it has a lot of pretty good moves and can be pretty bulky and a general good support mom. So from there, we can see a couple more Pokemon were picked, Marpico and Crawdont. None of them super exciting, but I ended up picking Weavile as my tier 2 and Guzzlord as my tier 3. I strongly consider Tyranitar, but I didn't think it was the best for my team, and that's kind of how I ended up. So kind of the big reason why I did a lot of these were kind of concerns with certain tiers running out of picks or things like that. I definitely think that I'd say two of my picks, I would say I want them on my team, but I think I misordered when I picked them, which is Sableye, which I mentioned earlier, and Zoroark. I think I could have gotten Zoroark a round or two later, and if I would have gotten it a little later, I might have been able to draft something like Spiritomb instead. However, it ends up not being too bad in all honesty. Like, obviously, I think Skuntank and Spiritomb would have been great additions to my team. Yes, I think Moltres would have been a great addition to my team. However, like I'm pretty happy with the team as it's constructed. So here we kind of can look a little bit closer at the specific team. Other, some of the things that that I mentioned of why I picked some of these over other options, I didn't really mention. Guzzlord has Wide Guard, which can be relevant to deal with some Dazzling Gleams. Let's see. Other than that, Mandibuzz having Tailwind can be pretty relevant because, as you can see, my team has a reasonable number of like medium speed Pokemon like Shiftry, Malamar, Bisharp, which are all like mid-speed tier Pokemon, which Tailwind can be pretty useful against, and even Pokemon like Urshifu, a Tailwind might be important or useful with, because it doesn't really have the greatest speed. Other than that, like Weavile having the fastest fake out of legal Pokemon is very good. And that's kind of the idea of my draft and kind of how I ended up going. So hopefully this ends up going well, and I'll get back to y'all with my first match. Thank you for watching.